Commercial insurance has become really our identity.
What are the main mistakes companies make when it comes to their commercial insurance?
Thinking that one insurance policy is the same as another.
Be proactive. Don't be reactive to insurance. Proactive can save you a lot of money, can save you a lot of headache. Sit down with a professional. Let's make sure you're covered.
Everyone, even small businesses, are getting hit with cyber attacks.
And as we bring clients in, they're treated like family.
Before we jump into the interview, I want to give a huge shout out to the House Bistro in Cali Mesa for hosting us today. This place is incredible. Great food, amazing atmosphere, and top-tier hospitality. If you're in the area, check them out at thehousebistro.com. All right, let's get to it. John and Teresa Heaton, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so today we're going to talk about something that is not the most exciting thing that people think about when starting a business, which is insurance. And you both are experts. You're the founders of Heaton Associates. And I'd like to start with you, Teresa, telling us about what are the main mistakes companies make when it comes to their commercial insurance?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it stems around thinking that one insurance policy is the same as another. And sometimes business owners forget to ask questions. You can see a lot of difference, a lot of nuance, a lot of uniqueness in one business to the next, even if they're in the same industry. So what might fit for one business owner might not necessarily fit for another. And having those questions and being proactive and talking through the whole kind of like a risk assessment maybe is probably the best way to go for all new business owners and all seasoned business owners. There are, unfortunately, gaps in insurance policies, and if you're not aware of those, they could hurt in the long run. And sometimes you just need a full review of kind of what you are looking at now, what you're looking at in the future, your growth, to kind of shore up those potential gaps.
It's all about risk, isn't it? Thinking about insurance first before thinking about what happens, because people often delay the discussion about insurance. They don't want to think negative thinking and all of that stuff until disaster happens, and then they start with regret. So how can a company or a business leaders approach the insurance problem?
Absolutely. And we see that a lot too with entrepreneurs or business owners get into business because they love what they do, or they're excited and passionate about something that they're bringing to the market. And insurance is never the first thing that they think about, and I totally get it. But having those proactive conversations, I really like to talk about what your business looks like now, what your business is going to look like in the next 5 years, and even after that. So you can kind of gauge what kind of insurance needs you have now, but with future growth as well. Really, it comes back to just those proactive conversations where we're both asking questions and kind of figuring out what's most important to protect. There's no insurance product that's going to cover everything. And so when you have those discussions, you can kind of find out the best way to move forward to protect what's most important, and how maybe even with a non-insurance, not using insurance, how can you shore up the other areas that there might be some potential there too. So those conversations are just vital.
I'm curious now, how did you guys start Heaton Associates? What made you start an insurance business?
Yeah, so that takes us back to 2008 when I was originally licensed. I was working for a payroll company, a large national brand payroll company at the time, and selling payroll, selling workers' comp, selling health insurance. And it got to the point where I go, there's got to be a better way. It was very disjointed. It was 3 different departments. I mean, they had more products than that, but for those specific 3 ones that I focused on. And it was nothing. It was kind of a mess, to be completely honest. So fast forward a few years later, 2011, we decided to open up Heaton Associates Insurance Services, focusing on health insurance. We saw that the Affordable Care Act was signed in 2010, And there was a lot of questions. Nobody knew how that was going to affect health insurance, especially with 2014, it coming into when the act went into was active. So that's how we started. We started as a health insurance company doing group health, individual health. A few years in, I brought Teresa in to help me with the paperwork. And funny story, once you start doing insurance, everybody starts thinking you do every type of insurance. So we get phone calls. And I'd get phone calls once, hey, do you do commercial insurance? And I'd be like, no, we don't do commercial insurance. Well, she got mad at me. And she says, look, I've got some time. Send those referrals to me. And so that's how the commercial side really started. And now you fast forward 11 years later, commercial insurance is bigger than our health insurance book, even though health insurance is a big part of what we do. But commercial insurance has become really our identity. And a lot of it is what Teresa's hard work in building that.
All right. So you got him into that.
Yeah.
Yes. I've always had a soft spot for business to business. I've always been a huge proponent of business. I started my career in with a manufacturing company. So it's really kind of been important to me. And I saw a huge need. These people that would call John, they felt lost because they didn't have anyone to walk them through. No one was giving them the advice that would actually help them know what to cover, know what they need to cover, look at to give them an actual risk assessment. So it was heart-wrenching.
So would you say that Heaton Associates provide a complete end-to-end insurance services for businesses?
I would say so. I think there's not a lot that we don't do if we're talking about products that we offer.
Yeah.
I mean, we started as health insurance, so we're talking about for businesses. So we do group health for businesses. We help them with their employee benefits. So make sure that they can have a hiring package so they can get good employees. And that's your medical insurance, your dental insurance, your vision. We do offer supplemental and also group life. But then when you talk about a business owner protecting their risk, that's where Teresa's side really comes into play, and that's where you're talking about the general liability. You're talking about the workers' comp, professional. You can go on and on. Marine, ELOP. Did I say that wrong?
Yeah, EPLI.
EPLI.
Right now, those are the hot buttons.
Yeah.
Employers practices liability insurance for employer practices for employers that have employees, and just kind of that falls into wrongful terminations, anything like that. But also cyber is a hot button right now. Everyone, even small businesses, are getting hit with cyber attacks. So we do that. We have Keyman Insurance. We can help. We can't do them, but we can help facilitate strategic planning.
Yep.
We can help with succession planning in that we have products that can help those who, the succession planning.
The other thing that we also offer that really started in the last 5 years is HR support.
Okay.
And that's important. That kind of holds everything together. The relationship with the employer and the employees is key for a business to be successful.
Yeah, I want to talk more about the services, the individual services, but I want to clarify something for the audience. You're obviously dealing with companies who have employees. So we're not talking about startups, garage startups and stuff like that. We're not talking about small businesses. We're talking about of course, small business definition in the US is like under 400 employees. So it's massive companies. There's a lot of variation between a company of 1 and a company of 200. There's a lot of difference. So small business is not the right term. But when we're talking about the ideal customer profile or the ideal companies that you work with or you can help, what are the types of companies that you work with and how big the companies that you can work with?
Yeah, so I think so. We love the design space. So if you're an engineer, if you're an architect, if you're a land surveyor, if you're in the construction world, and then also your service companies, people who are going to people's homes or pest control, plumbers, that type of thing. And size-wise, one employee we love, but probably our sweet spot for us is probably 25 employees to 75 employees. That's where a lot of the issues usually come in. It's kind of underserved. A lot of the bigger brokers don't want to, they're kind of too small for them. And state of California can be tough. It can be tough to operate. There's There's certain trainings that every company has to offer their employees, anti-harassment training and workplace violence training. And if you're not doing that, you're out of compliance, and there could be fines. And we help put all that into place for the employer so that they are in compliance and protected.
And let's talk about the services. How do you categorize the different services that you have?
So it's really broken down into the kind of 3 different departments. So we have the health insurance side. So that's the employee benefits. And so anything but say a 401k, we can offer part of that hiring package. And then you have the HR support side, which packages really go hand in hand with the health insurance to again help and make sure that the employee relationship is going well and the employer is in compliance. And then you have the commercial side, which is a whole suite of products. General liability, workers' comp. We talked about a few of them. Commercial auto, cyber, inland marine, professional bonds. It goes on and on and on. We're leaving some out, but that whole suite we offer.
You, Teresa, you mentioned that you were the business liability, kind of the business to business side of things, and you expanded that line or that vertical. But a lot of business owners that I meet on a regular basis, when you mention these services, the names like liability or whatever the other names, they go blank. They don't know. As you mentioned earlier, people go to business because they have a passion. They know a lot about something specific, but they lack the knowledge about areas like insurance. So break down for me the essential. I know there's a lot of products, but the essentials for companies, 25 employees, what a business owner should be thinking about when it comes to commercial insurance.
So it really is dependent on the type of business and the industry. However, every business is going to need some level of liability coverage.
What does that mean?
So the liability coverage will cover you and your business against any type of law. I should say not any type of. I got to clarify that. But it will protect you against lawsuits or any type of claim to your business. So from there, this is where it gets a little tricky because depending on your business, there could be exclusions for certain things or inclusions for certain things. But the general liability policy is really essential for all businesses, and it will cover slip and falls on your own premises. It'll cover a limited, for the most part, limited products and completed operations. So if you are a service provider and something happens at a client's location and you cause damage, that insurance policy and that carrier has a duty to defend you and to help with those damages or the claim. So the liability is really the first step. That's essential for any type. Now, for certain professions, more professional preventions, you'd need some type of an errors and omissions or professional liability. So if you're giving advice to someone, or if you're an attorney, or think of it kind of like malpractice for a doctor or anyone in the medical profession, it's similar to that you should have coverage that would cover the liability for your professional arena and advice as well. So it really depends on the industry, and that's why those conversations are really not something to be worried about or shied away from, but just it's a good place to start. The other essential is anyone who has employees in the state of California has to have workers' comp. It can be painful, and some industries get hit harder with base rates from the WCIRB. I get that. There are some ways to kind of be proactive and talk safety and try to get the best possible rates.
What does workers' comp really mean?
In California, we are set up as a mandatory workers' comp. So every employer has mandatory workers' comp requirements, meaning that if an employee is sick on the job because of the job, right, or gets injured on the job because of the job, that there's coverage. Way back when, 100 years ago, when employees did not have much care from employers, they would get hurt. They'd work 12 hours, get hurt in a factory, and then they were just set aside. So there weren't any protections for employees. So now if someone is legitimately injured on the job, there's that coverage there to not only pay for their medical bills, but also to pay some lost time, and it's not a burden on the employer.
Oh, I can see this is very, very important.
It is very important,
especially
but it's also
for companies who do physical work.
Absolutely. So it's vital. It's vital to talk it through, and there's ways that you can, with workers' comp, also create a safe environment for your employees and not get hit with such high rates. With any claim in any type of insurance, there is a risk of insurance going up, and the way that the WCIRB is the governing board or body in workers' comp in California that is given the authority and the responsibility to set the rates for each year based on the industry. So there's a whole lot of equations that go into that, but when we kind of look at that for larger companies, they will be assessed an experience modification that can either help a business or can hurt it a little bit, and it's directly rated to the number of claims, the severity of claims, and kind of their history. So it's good to have these conversations and not to be afraid of them. There are ways that we can kind of help you be a little bit more proactive in that.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people will be worried about, oh, this is so much money, all of that stuff. And also, especially, you mentioned another service that is the employers, something around the employers. And I happen to know a friend of mine who just filed a lawsuit against her employer
EPLA.
for wrongful termination.
Yes.
And she's getting a lot of money from that.
So there are a couple of things I want to say about that. So going back to the workers' compensation, there are some states in our nation that are not, I can't remember the exact term, but they are not required to have workers' compensation. So at that point, an employee would actually sue the company for relief. So although people don't like workers' comp, I totally get it. It's an additional cost for running a business, but it will shield the employer, it'll shield the business from that liability because it's the single remedy in California. You cannot sue an employer that has workers' comp.
Oh, you can't?
No.
All right.
For any type. So that's why it is a liability that every business owner should have.
Right.
So, and then going back to the EPLI, it's
EPLI stands for?
Employer Practices Liability Insurance.
All right.
So there are a lot of things that employers should do that have nothing to do with insurance. It's just your practices that these are good practices for running a business and how to create a healthy and happy workforce, right? Fair. And sometimes we fall short of those. So the EPLI, Employer Practices Liability Insurance, could potentially kick in if there was some issue that was the business was deemed at fault for wrongful termination or for maybe there was an issue of harassment that was reported and was not handled the best way.
Mm-hmm.
There are in this day and age, there are a lot of things business owners need to kind of be proactive and institute good policies, and that's one of the coverages that has become more important, more popular. A general liability policy and a workers' comp policy will never cover employer practices. They will not cover an employer if he's found liable for wrongful termination or some other employer issue. It's a good thing to discuss.
All right. So, John, when it comes to operating a company, and you've served so many clients, you've been in the business for a long time, what are the driving values that you operate from?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I think of that, I think of the word family. We're obviously family, me and Teresa. And as we bring clients in, they're treated like family. And I think that's truly how we treat our clients. We celebrate their successes. We help them through their downfalls because their successes are our successes. We find a lot of times that most of the time, a lot of our clients become our really good friends. So we hang out on weekends, go to kids' birthday parties, go on vacations with them. And that's how they're treated. They're treated like family. And I think a lot of that is rooted in our faith. We are a faith-based company. Faith is a big part of our culture at home, how we act, how we teach our kids. And it's the same thing. It carries over to the office where we that's how we treat our clients. We're going to be honest. We're going to be trustworthy. A lot of times, especially in the commercial world, they send us money to pay the carriers. That's just kind of how the policies work. And that takes a lot of trust, to make sure that we're actually doing that. And I don't think if that trust wasn't there, we wouldn't have been, being as successful as we have so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with insurance, like you want to make sure that you because they're going to save you when things things are bad. So you want to count on their counsel, because a lot of insurance agents or companies try to sell the lowest rates.
Right.
Although the lowest rates could be harmful to you when you end up needing a claim. And a lot of, again, what we're doing right now is educating the consumer or the client on what insurance should they get and what kind of limits they should get. And it needs trustworthiness for the insurance professional to help us business owners navigate all of these uncertainties when it comes to insurance.
I was going to say, you see that a lot in the workers' comp world, where you have a broker or whoever's setting it up, and they're just trying to get the cheapest policy in place. So they're misclassifying the employees. So they're getting the cheapest employee class code just because it's cheaper. And then they're also lowballing the payroll, because that's how it's calculated. Those two are calculated to come up with the premium amount. And you can manipulate that to get that really low to make it look attractive, and people are buying it. And what stinks is what happens is a claim comes, and now they're finding that it was written poorly. So they're either not paying the claim, or you're getting this huge bill due, because now they're going to classify your employees correctly, and they're going to, say, oh, this is actually what your payroll was. And it just hurts. When it's not done correctly up front, the pain at the end of a policy during an audit is painful.
Indeed. And when it comes to, the fires that have been happening in California, a lot of insurance companies are withdrawing. Is this affecting your industries at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think also the fires is one of the manifestations of kind of what's happened over the last 10 years with the industry in general in California. It's gotten a little tough. We've seen a lot of carriers leave California, which has been hard, just no longer wanting to do business. And at first it started with just personal lines carriers for homeowners, not willing to, really after the Paradise Fire up north, not willing to be that leveraged in California any longer. But as with everything, it's trickled over to the commercial side of things too. And we're seeing that due to not just the fires, but also, and the risk of brush fire, but also to the legal atmosphere as well, and the additional burdens placed sometimes on California businesses that carriers are just not willing to risk those coverages anymore.
But for now, your clients are okay? Like there's no problems with renewing an insurance policy or anything of that nature?
It has hit everybody. I can say that across the board. However, there are still carriers willing to. California is one of the biggest economies in the world. We will always have carriers here. And so that is just what I like to do. It really is to find those carriers that will fit that specific niche for my clients. And really, when John was talking about our core values, one of the greatest things that we've been able to see over the last, almost 15 years has been to see the clients that started with us when they were small and now they're large. And to being able to help them grow and to help them navigate that risk that comes with a growing company. So it's been awesome. And I think finding the right carriers is sometimes a challenge, but always worthwhile. And it's so rewarding for us when we feel like, okay, I've been able to give that business owner peace of mind.
Awesome.
I was going to say, it's just also one of the advantages of working with a broker. So when you have access to multiple carriers, as opposed to working with a captive agent that is limited to, that particular carrier. So
got it.
Yeah.
So what would be the last kind of takeaway for business owners listening to this that you want them to know about? We discussed a little bit about don't go with the cheapest price. This could be a valuable advice in your industry. But what other things would you say?
I think the number one, and Teresa kind of talked about that earlier, is being proactive. Be proactive. Don't be reactive to insurance. Proactive can save you a lot of money, can save you a lot of headache. Sit down with a professional. Let's make sure you're covered. Let's look at the entire business. One thing Teresa's really good at is going in depth and looking at every nook and cranny of your business to make sure that you're covered. Not over-covered, because the last thing you want to pay is too much of insurance. Nobody wants to pay insurance, or nobody wants to use insurance, because insurance is expensive. If you used it, something bad happened. But you also want to make sure there's somebody on your side to help you through those bad times, and that's something we're good at.
One of the things that we really like to do with our clients is we're there, like John mentioned, I think earlier, every step of the way. So we like to help obviously through the policy inception, throughout your policy, making sure it fits for you, throughout those year and subsequent years, but also through the audits and through any potential claims. If there's a problem, I want to hear about it first, and then we talk it through, and we can go from there. The worst for me would be to have a client feel like they are left alone and they don't know who to help them. That's why we take such a proactive approach, so that our clients know they can, no matter what, they can call us. And if they can't get a hold of me, they can get a hold of my assistants, or we can somehow get through to us. So there's always someone there to answer the phone, and always someone there ready to give that answer. Going back to the clients, what they can do, is really don't be scared of having those conversations. We're never going to oversell you. That's not my position. That's not what I want to do. I want to talk about things so that you can see them, and then you make the decision. Insurance is a very personal decision. There are rarely rights and wrongs for insurance. It's the individual business owners, really how risk averse they are. And some businesses need a little bit less insurance. Other businesses need a lot more. It really depends on the business owner and the type of industry. Don't be afraid to have those conversations, and at least then you know.
This is great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Naja. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.